LiSTNR production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you, and welcome to The Briefing. Today we're giving you another bonus episode of Crime in Focus Killer Charm, which centres around a suburban grandmother who is accused of orchestrating her ex-partner's murder via a wood chipper. Killer Charm is brought to you by me, investigative journalist Tara Cassidy, and the LiSTNR crime team, and has just been named as a finalist for this year's Clarion Awards for Excellence in Journalism, and recently won Most Outstanding Podcast at the Kennedy Awards. If you haven't listened to the first 2 eps yet, we'll pop a link in the show notes, or you can search Crime in Focus Killer Charm wherever you get your podcasts. Here's episode 3.
A warning. This podcast contains descriptions of a violent crime. Listener discretion is advised.
At 7:59 p.m, the night of Bruce Saunders' death, Rebecca Graham is at home and sees a call coming in that she's not expecting. It's her mum, Sharon Graham.
Which is bizarre because she never calls me. And she is screaming through the phone. I can't make any sense of what she's trying to tell me. And she was like, there's been an accident. I don't know who's hurt. I don't know what's happened, but it's with the wood chipper machine.
Sharon is inconsolable, and the call ends before Rebecca gets an answer to who's been hurt. A few minutes later, another call from her mum. And
I'm asking her, who is it? Who's hurt? Is it Bruce? And she's like,
It's Bruce. His arm's gone in.
I'm thinking the worst, right? And then she's trying to tell me that he had gotten his arm in the machine. Then I get another call, I think from Sharon Baton then, telling me that, Bruce is dead.
I'm Tara Cassidy. This is Crime in Focus Killer Charm, Episode 3. Half an hour after Rebecca gets that second phone call, Detective Senior Constable Chris Jewig arrives at Sharon Baton's Gomborian property, where Bruce Saunders has supposedly died in a tragic wood chipper accident. Other police and emergency services are already there. Detective Jewig will go on to become one of the lead investigators on the case.
Now, do you recall Sunday, the 12th of November, 2017?
Yes.
Were you working that evening?
I was.
I meet Detective Jewig, Chris, at Sharon Graham's murder trial. He's tall, with broad shoulders, greying hair, and a friendly face. Chatting to him outside of court, he comes across as personable, jovial even. But in the witness box, giving evidence, Detective Jewig is straight-faced and serious. These are excerpts of what he said, but this isn't his voice. Detective Jewig tells the court when he arrived it was dark, 8:35 p.m, and the scene was only lit up by emergency service lights.
I walked to the right-hand side of that truck and to the rear of the truck and observed a yellow industrial wood chipping machine coupled to the truck. I spoke with General Duties Police, 2 female officers, and they indicated to me in the back of the wood chipping machine what appeared to be human remains.
Just a quick heads up. Detective Jewig is about to recall some graphic details from the night. It's not pleasant, and I won't rehash anything that's not necessary. What I will share with you are the parts that play a crucial role in the police investigation.
All right. Well, if you could tell us what you saw as you approached the wood chipper, please.
So in the rear tray of the wood chipping machine, there was what appeared to be a pair or a set of human legs.
Photos of the wood chipper and the rest of the crime scene are projected up onto a TV screen for the courtroom to see.
Now, if we can then focus on this area here to the bottom left, did you note something at the scene as it's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, it appeared to be blood and related to some form of bloodletting event above it, so it appears to be blood which has dripped down onto the tray.
The detective also notes a piece of wood going into the machine's feeder or opening tray, as well as mobile phone remains among the debris. These items and the blood pattern will go on to be important forensic discoveries, as will Detective Jewig's next observations.
Now, there is notations here of some gouge marks.
Yes.
Did you see those?
Saw what appeared to be drag marks, or there was a disturbance in the dirt behind the machine.
All right. For what sort of distance?
Perhaps 3 metres?
Detective Jewig tells the court after his initial assessment of the scene, he went up to the house to speak with Peter, Greg and Sharon Baton. He says the two men appeared to be in a state of shock.
Peter Koenig was sitting in a chair and he had a towel over his head, mainly covering his head, and he had his head down. He wasn't talking. Greg Rosa was sitting down as well. He, just by his facial expression, appeared that he'd been in some sort of traumatic event, the way he spoke, and then he did most of the talking.
You've heard what happened next. Greg and Peter went to give their witness statements at the station, where police learned the name Sharon Graham. They find out she knew all of the people at the Gomborian property that night and had been living with the now deceased Bruce Saunders for over a year. They also find out Sharon Graham was Greg Rosa's current girlfriend and that she was one of the organisers of the tree clearing weekends. Sharon Graham's also the first person Greg called after Bruce died. So the next logical question is, where was Sharon Graham when all of this was unfolding? It turned out the close friends, Sharon Graham and Sharon Baton, had spent the day together on the Sunshine Coast. Remember, Sharon Baton was the Gomborian property owner, the sweet grandmother with the kind face who I drove to see in Grafton. And Sharon Graham, or Muffin, is the one who'll go on to be accused of orchestrating Bruce's murder. At that point, she was still living in the spare room at his house in Nambour, even though they had split. The night before Bruce died, Sharon Baton had slept over at the Nambour house, and when she headed back to her place late Sunday afternoon, Sharon Graham, Muffin, was home alone. The next thing I know about Sharon Graham's night comes from phone records I hear in court. They show she received a call from her fiancé Greg at 7:45 p.m. Make note of that time, 7:45 p.m. It becomes an important piece of evidence. Funnily, it was something Greg didn't mention in his witness statement. Those same phone records show that straight after, Sharon Graham went on to make a number of calls. She tried Sharon Baton 5 times just before 8 p.m. She then called the other man at the Gomborian property that night, Peter Koenig, twice, then a few others. I hear them give evidence in court about the calls they received. Again, these are excerpts from their evidence, but not their voices. One of her friends,
"It was Sharon, and she was upset and said, 'Did I know the address of Sharon Baton's property at Gomborian? Because there had been an accident.' And I said, 'No, I don't know the address.'"
The friend says she told Sharon to hang up and dial 000. She didn't. Instead, the court hears Sharon called another mate.
She was very, very upset and she was crying. And she told me that one of the guys had fallen into the wood chipper. And I tried to comfort her because I didn't really know what guy she was talking about.
Next, Sharon called Rebecca. That's the call Rebecca spoke about at the start of this episode. Her mother, inconsolable. Rebecca says she received another call from her mum's number shortly after.
But it's the ambulance calling me from her phone, telling me they're taking her to the hospital. And I'm like, why are you taking her to the hospital? And they said, she's having a panic attack. I'm like, okay. no worries, I'll be there as soon as I can.
Rebecca made her way to the hospital to meet her mum. It turns out Greg had phoned Sharon Graham a second time that night before calling her an ambulance after he heard her panicking on the phone. While the ambulance was on the way, the service called Sharon Graham to talk to her. There's a recording of that call. It wasn't released in the court documents I got for this podcast, but I heard it played out at the trial. The call goes for just over 8 minutes. Sharon Graham sounds distraught, crying hysterically and hyperventilating at times, while the operator tries to calm her down and coach her to breathe slowly. There's one point where Sharon says she feels like she's going to pass out. In isolation, it would be a pretty distressing phone call to hear. A woman clearly in severe panic. But hearing this play out in Sharon Graham's murder trial, I remember thinking if she did do this, and this call is all staged, part of the plan, then it's a level of manipulation I've never seen before. After the phone call, a paramedic arrived at the Nambour house to find Sharon alone, inside, crying on the lounge. I hear him speak during the trial, and he tells the court Sharon said her friend had been involved in an accident, and as a result, she was feeling weak, faint, and nauseous. The paramedic took her vitals and found some outside the normal range. Her breathing rate and blood pressure were high. From the symptoms she described, he decided to take her to hospital. The paramedic says Sharon calmed down during the ride, but when he dropped her off, she became upset again, crying and whimpering before being handed over to hospital staff.
So I drive from Crestmead to Nambour Hospital.
That's about an hour and a half drive. Crestmead's just outside of Brisbane. Rebecca's friend gives her a lift, and she says when they arrive, they find Sharon in emergency care.
Like, she's not saying a word. The doctor's trying to ask her, why are you here? Why have you been brought in here? And she just keeps repeating herself. It was just meant to be a favour for my friend. Yeah, it was just out of goodwill. I'm standing there going, Mum, tell them what's happened. Like, I don't know if it was me that ended up saying it or if she actually ended up saying it, but he's dead. Someone just died. That's why you're apparently here. Anyway, she was discharged straight away, take her back to her house, and we stayed up with her for a few hours that night. We ended up going to bed, I don't know, midnight-ish or past.
The next morning, just before 7, phone records show that Sharon Graham texts a few friends. In one of them, she tells her mate,
"Can't talk. I'm devastated. Bruce has passed away."
She then goes into detail about what supposedly happened the night before, even giving a theory as to what led to the tragedy, saying Bruce had been texting her when he dropped his phone and must have went in after it. These texts raise suspicions of their own. Bruce's phone was destroyed in the wood chipper, so at that point, no one's been able to confirm his last text. And both Peter and Greg said they didn't see Bruce fall into the chipper. So if that's the case, how could Sharon Graham be so sure about the sequence of events, and less than 12 hours after it happened? Rebecca says she and her friend were still with her mum at Bruce's house in Nambour that morning.
We all wake up, we were sitting outside having coffee, and she's like a completely different Sharon. She's like composed and calculated in everything that then happens after that. So she could cry at the drop of a hat, my mother. So she started to cry. Then she changes from crying to, "Oh my God, Rebecca, read this." And she brings out Bruce's will. And she gets me to read the will. And I'm thinking in that moment, who does that? Who gets excited about someone's will the very next day after someone's just died? Like, it's not normal. And I'm reading the will and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I said to her, why has Bruce left everything to you and me? and not Blake? Why are you the one that's going to get everything? Oh, he loves me. He just loves me so much. He changed it a couple of weeks ago for me because that's how much he loved me. And he loves you too, Rebecca. And he said, Blake's had enough from inheritance from when his mum died, so he doesn't need any more. And I was like, oh my God.
Rebecca was named in the will herself. She and Bruce's son Blake would be next in line if anything happened to Sharon.
Which I thought was very bizarre because I'm nothing in his life. Like I knew him for what, a year? Like it made no sense. It made no sense she was left in his will because they were not even together.
Rebecca says Sharon told them the will had been updated just a week or two prior to Bruce's death, changing her from his partner to his friend. In fairness, during the trial, the defence argued that months before Bruce died, Sharon tried to have herself removed from his will, asking Sharon Baton to speak to him about it, which she says she did. But Bruce said no, still hoping the pair would mend their relationship and fighting for Sharon Graham's love. The prosecution, though, argued this was just part of Sharon's ploy to make it look like she wanted off the will, all while knowing full well that Bruce would keep her on. The day after Bruce's death in the afternoon, Peter and Greg come back to the Nambour house. Rebecca says there was a weird atmosphere.
It didn't fit the event, like to me. It didn't feel like the behaviours matched what had just happened. Peter was acting not Peter. To me, he looked like the one that was affected the most.
According to Rebecca, Greg went on to do most of the talking that day.
Greg was just talking shit like Greg does, you know, blaming it on Bruce and how, you know, I warned him that many times not to muck around near the machine, like big noting himself and making it out that it was Bruce's fault. Sharon was cold about it. Like, it was like she didn't want to talk about it anymore. She was like, it's done, move on. Like, life was just moving on. And Peter obviously was extremely affected, and she was getting the shits with him for moping, like for looking sad, for...
The grieving.
Yeah. And she was annoyed at that. She wanted him to get over it and, you know, be normal.
It's odd and suspicious. And as you know, in the days following Bruce's death, suspicion around Sharon would only grow. People like Mark, Bruce's butcher mate, ringing in to pass on their concerns that this might have been more than an accident. It's time for police to talk to Sharon Graham themselves. So on November 17, 5 days after Bruce's death, Detective Senior Constable Chris Dewig phones Sharon Graham and asks her to visit the Nambour police station to give a witness statement of her own. First, police want to know her personal history and how she came to know those at the property that night. One thing that's noteworthy is Sharon Graham's descriptions of her relationship to the 3 men involved. She acknowledges that she dated Bruce Saunders, but introduces him as a friend, saying, "After a month of cuddles and kisses, I realised he wasn't for me." She calls Peter Koenig a good mate and had, quote, never been in a relationship with him or been intimate with him. Finally, she describes her relationship with Greg as intimate but casual. Sharon and Bruce were together for over a year and talking about marriage, a lot more than just cuddles and kisses. And at this point, she's engaged to Greg. Not exactly casual. In fact, her whole statement is riddled with lies. many of which the police pick up on and will use to unravel the cover-up of Bruce's murder. I'll go into them later in the series, but right now, with so many mistruths about her relationship to these men, it seems less than likely that she's being honest about her innocent friendship with Peter too. I reach out to Sharon Graham's former partner, hoping he might be able to shed some light on her life back when they were together. Remember the one who Sharon moved to Queensland with, along with Peter Koenig? His name is Barry Collins.
So you can have a pike later. I'm not a pike later, a bloody bangers and mash and mashed peas. Bangers and mash and mushy peas.
I meet Barry at the back of his local pub. It's in a rural part of Queensland called the Scenic Rim, a region filled with mountains and national parks, farmland, livestock and lakes. Barry rocks up in some sandals, a t-shirt, black sunnies and a cap, his grey hair poking out the side. The pub technically isn't open when we get there. Staff are still setting up, but they're nice enough to let us use their smokers area at the back to chat. We sit down and Barry begins to tell me about how he first met Sharon Graham over 18 years ago, back in Adelaide, South Australia. They were in their 40s and 50s then, and their relationship would go on to last about a decade.
Well, I met Sharon on the dating site. That was it, just went from there, and we decided to meet at a little cafe down at Christie's Beach. So I used to go there on a Sunday morning for breakfast. So this day I decided to ride my bike. I hadn't ridden it for ages. Bit of an impression, like turn up on a Honda Gullwing type thing. And yeah, we hit it off really well. And at the end of it, I said, I'll catch up with you and we'll see what happens. And went to start my bike and the battery was flat. It wouldn't start. So luckily she had jumper leads in the boot of her car. She gave me a jump start and she said, I'll follow you home if you want. Make sure you get home okay. And yeah, okay. I think she was there till about 7 o'clock that night. Then she decided to go home. And she spoke to me the next day and said, look, I want to move out of the house, but I've got nowhere to go. Can I rent a room off you? And of course you can, Didn't pay a charge of rent, of course, but that's what started it, actually.
So Sharon moves in after one date. Safe to say she made an impression on Barry. He was running his own trucking business in Adelaide when they met, and soon Sharon started doing some office work for him too. The business is actually how they came to meet Peter Koenig.
We got recommended by somebody in Adelaide. We needed a local driver. So Peter came for an interview on the Saturday morning and basically started the following week. And yeah, he was really good at his job,
Barry thought Sharon was brilliant at her job too. He says she'd pick up mistakes that seasoned accountants and bookkeepers would miss. He was smitten with her at work and at home.
I liked her a hell of a lot, and I thought to myself, this girl needs someone to look after her, whether it be as a lover or a partner or whatever, but I didn't care. Sharon had a pretty tormented past. She had it pretty tough.
Barry also says Sharon was estranged from her parents. They were part of a strict religious group in South Australia.
She couldn't be part of the church, it wasn't for her. If you weren't in that group, you were ostracised. So the whole time that we were in South Australia, Sharon never, ever, ever was allowed to go and see her parents.
Soon, Barry becomes Sharon's family.
I just felt she needed help and protection, from all the animals that were out there in the arseholes and the way they'd been treating her. So I suppose it became a job for me to look after her as well as... And she looked after me, I tell you. She was a fantastic cook. The house was clean, it was spotless clothes. She was a fantastic person and a partner.
It sounds like Barry and Sharon really did look after one another, but it seems as though Sharon still had some walls up.
You couldn't lay in bed and cuddle and kiss and cuddle, and there was no nice little warm peck on the cheek or a pat on the bum of a morning, just nothing.
Barry says he didn't hold out hope for that type of affection from Sharon.
She can't. Sharon has no feeling in that respect. We could say a cold heart.
But Barry didn't mind. He says he accepted Sharon for who she was.
And it was good, I tell you. It was really, really nice. We had some fantastic years and times in South Australia. We were there 10 years, and I had no intention of leaving. For some reason, we came to Queensland and she met a different lot of people and she changed.
Barry says the move was Sharon's idea. She wanted a fresh start. But as you know, they didn't move alone.
The week that we're leaving, Sharon said, "Can Peter come? He wants to come with us."
What'd you think of that?
Shit. Bloody shit. Damn it. But after, 10 years, I've been in Adelaide, and there were certain things with Peter and Sharon that was just a little bit too close. But I agreed. I said, all right, if he wants to come, let him come.
So they pack up and move to Gympie, Queensland, a regional city about an hour from the Sunshine Coast, where Barry relocates his trucking business. Sharon Graham, Barry, and Peter. In fact, Peter doesn't just move to Gympie with them. He moves in with them. First to a caravan on their property, and later into their house itself. Peter was always around. Sharon's daughter Rebecca couldn't make sense of it. She liked Barry and thought it was a little strange.
I thought it was so odd that he was always there with her, no matter where we went. So we'd go out for dinner with Barry and Mum, and Peter would be there. And I'd be like, that's weird. Why is this man always part of family things?
Peter's of average build and balding, with some wispy grey hair which he ties into a ponytail. He wears a full goatee, and in all the pictures I've seen of him, is rarely caught smiling. Instead, he's usually set in a blank stare. Rebecca couldn't understand the dynamic between the three, at first.
Then when he moved to Queensland, in their house, I was like, this is really fucking weird that Barry is even accepting of this. Like, what relationship would accept another man to always be constantly a part of everyday living? Like,
soon she finds out it's really only about two of them.
And I first found out that they were more than friends when they were all still living in Adelaide.
She says a friend told her about walking in on Sharon and Peter having sex one day.
I've straight away gotten on the phone to Barry. Barry doesn't believe me. I end up confronting Sharon at a party in front of everyone. She stands there like mute, and I confront Peter quite aggressively with Barry there, and I'm like, tell the truth, like, and I'm, on the attack, and, that all got denied. No one had my back. I was then made out to be the troublemaker of poor Sharon and trying to cause her harm and all this sort of shit. But it's true. There was a sexual relationship there.
Rebecca even found proof.
I found emails on her computer one day to Peter telling him how much she loved him and wanted to run away with him and how they're going to do this. And, I knew, but no one else believed it.
The affair had been going on for years. confirmed when lawyers confronted Peter about dozens of explicit photos of the pair found on his phone during Sharon's murder trial, compelling him to finally admit the truth. It must have been validating when it all came out in court.
Yep, because it was like the first time that Barry, all of them, were like, wow, I'm sorry, Beck, that we didn't listen or, I was like, yeah, thank you.
In fact, the prosecutor describes Sharon and Peter's relationship as tortured because it always seems to be Peter following Sharon around and getting little in return. Peter was even there for the end of Barry and Sharon's relationship, which happened during a road trip to far north Queensland. They were there with the Batons and another friend. After one final argument, Barry left the holiday on his own, headed back for Gympie, while Sharon and the rest of the group pulled into Bramwell Station after one of their cars broke down. Bramwell Station was the most northerly cattle station in Cape York. If you're not familiar, a cattle station's essentially a large farm that rears steers and other cattle. Bramwell's also a tourist park and a popular stopover spot for travellers. And it's where Sharon Graham met a new guy, Ron Fabry. Funnily enough, the same pastime that first bonded the two Sharons helped Muffin get to know Ron too, a night of rock and roll dancing at the station.
And then next minute they're hooked up. But then she went and worked up there for a little bit. And then he left Bramwell Station and they moved down, and I think they were in a caravan for a while. And then they broke up after a little while. Wasn't very long. They had a big fight or something. I don't even know what it's over.
Before the pair broke up, though, Rebecca says she got a chance to meet this new guy, Ron, once he and Sharon returned from the Cape. She says she was shocked by how fast the relationship seemed to be progressing.
She met this man when they all went on their road trip to the Cape. A week after knowing him, he's buying her a house. They've come out to dinner and they've got documents of the house that he's purchasing to give to her. And I'm talking, they've known each other maybe maximum 2 weeks. How does one do that?
Plans for a house after a week or two of meeting? That's a pretty big claim. But it does sound eerily similar to the way Sharon and Greg supposedly started too. Remember, Sharon Baton told us Greg was also talking about buying Muffin a house within weeks. It got me questioning the same thing as Rebecca. If this is true, how on earth does Sharon Graham do it? And why would these men be so happy to buy someone they just met a house? I decided the only way to know for sure was to track down Ron Fabry myself. It wasn't as easy as I thought it might be in the world of social media. Ron has a Facebook account, which I messaged, but he never saw. I tried his old workplace, Bramwell Cattle Station, but they'd since changed owners, and no one had his details. My team and I eventually managed to find a few possible phone numbers for people named Ron Fabry, and with some luck, the first one I tried just happened to be him. I was a little apprehensive at first. Cold calls usually go one of two ways. But when Ron picked up, he was friendly and told me he was more than happy to speak to me about Sharon Graham. So how long were you in the Cape?
I loved working up there, always. Went up there for 6 months of the year working.
Yeah, doing what?
Diesel fitter. I'm a brewing mechanic.
Like most cattle stations and tourism spots, the work often comes in seasons. So for Ron, it meant working as a diesel fitter at the station about 6 months a year. When Sharon and her group's car broke down and got towed into the station, Ron was the one to check it.
And then all of a sudden, she went away and come back and, moved in. So that's the start. Next minute, she said, I want to lift home back to Brisbane. I said, I'm not going to the end of the season. She just hung around till the end of the season.
According to Ron, Sharon Graham told him that her partner Barry took off and left her. Ron says she'd often badmouth Barry and find herself back in his room. But to Ron at the time, it was just a fling. It did progress as the pair spent more time together, dating for about 5 months. And in that time, he says they had some disagreements.
She reckons I promised her a house. Hang on. You know, she was buying a house down there. She put deposit on a house and reckon I told her to buy it.
Sharon was trying to say that you told her she could use your money to purchase.
Yeah, she didn't. I didn't. I remember going to the house and looked and said, oh, it's a very nice house. And she went back the next day and organised everything.
This is the house Rebecca says she saw documents for when she first met Ron at a dinner. But when I asked Ron about that night, do you remember going to lunch or dinner with them?
No, because don't forget I was spaced out of my mind sometimes. I wasn't well enough to drive. I would never drive a car. It felt like I was drunk half the time.
So there was a house, but Ron says he was never going to buy it for her. And that dinner with Rebecca is clouded for him by health issues he says he experienced while he was dating Sharon. According to Ron, he was constantly feeling dazed, confused, and suffering memory problems.
And then every time I was with her, I got sick, lightheaded, not really well, can't focus on anything. One day I come back to her place one morning, my head wasn't clear. Every time it seemed strange. I didn't know it at the time.
Ron says something didn't feel right, so he ended it with Sharon just 5 months after they got together. He'd also been visiting a doctor to figure out what was causing his symptoms.
I got up to my doctor and she was looking for something in me to make me sick, and she was looking for everything. She could not find anything.
Ron says she was never able to figure out what had been wrong with him, but he claims a few weeks after ending his relationship with Sharon, his symptoms went away.
After 3 weeks, I felt better.
I know what you might be thinking here. Is Ron saying he was being poisoned by Sharon Graham? Yes. In fact, he's convinced of it. And I know he took it seriously enough to talk about it with police. To be clear, I haven't found any evidence that proves his claim, but the reason I've decided to include it is it's not the first time in my investigation that someone's brought up a story about Sharon allegedly trying to poison a partner. I also got told Barry Collins, Sharon's long-term ex, had made a comment once wondering whether Sharon might have been putting something in his food. I put this to Barry, and according to him, sometime before the trip to the Cape, which prompted his and Sharon's split, he fell sick, and doctors couldn't tell him why he was suddenly feeling nauseous and drowsy. He claims that when him and Sharon broke up, he felt better again, just like what Ron described. Still, there's no way I can find out for sure whether these suspicions are correct or not. But in talking to Ron Fabry some more, I learned something else that would be damning for Sharon Graham. This one I could prove. For Ron, it started one day when he says he was contacted by police.
Police come and told me that she had all my mail, and I just blew my mind out.
How long after your breakup was this that police turned up?
Oh, this is probably, I'd say, a year and a half.
Sharon Graham had somehow managed to get hold of some of his mail. So she had all your mail?
All my stuff, everything. Bank statement, superannuation statements, miles of the stuff.
Police approached Ron after finding his documents at Sharon Graham's property in a raid. They wanted to know why she had them, but he says she shouldn't have. He never gave her permission. How long were you missing mail for?
Probably 3 months.
According to Ron, he never discussed his superannuation with Sharon either, but says he has large funds after working in both the United States and Australia.
I did not mention it. The only thing I could think there might have been a statement come through the mail, she got it.
With your super details. Wow. It wasn't just these mail and superannuation stories that rang alarm bells for me. Ron said another thing that sounded all too familiar.
Oh, she said, let's go life insurance together. I said, no.
And what was her reason?
Oh, we don't be together. I'm thinking, hang on.
And you've not been together very long at that point.
Yeah, no. That was probably about 3 months.
It's like almost everything Ron tells me about Sharon lines up with the experiences of other men she's been with. Some that Ron doesn't even know, and with stories that haven't been made public before now. How many men has she tried to con? When I spoke to Barry Collins, he also said Sharon had suggested the pair make life arrangements together. For them, it was relating to Barry's will though. And he says the reason she wanted to arrange their wills was in case Barry ever had an accident. And they changed it. Sharon became a beneficiary. From everyone I've spoken to, and now Ron Fabry, it looks like Sharon Graham did have a pattern after all. She didn't just look for men who had money. She'd take steps to make it her own. Her daughter Rebecca says she saw it too.
The more I sort of got to know her past, she somehow manages to get men to leave everything to her in their wills. Like 7 men had her in her will. I'm like, how's that possible?
She said this to you?
Yeah. Because she says it like it's so amazing, like, oh my God, Rebecca, he left me in his will. You know, he's such a nice person. I'm like, do you have fireworks coming out of your... like, how do you do this? Like...
7 wills. Now, while I haven't spoken to every man from Sharon's past, I was able to confirm at least 4 of these, just from her relationships from the early 2000s on. There was Bruce, Barry, and the third I found out in court was actually Peter Koenig. Interestingly, he says he destroyed that will sometime in 2017. As for the 4th, it turns out at the same time that police located Ron Fabry's super documents in the search of Sharon Graham's house, they also found a handwritten will and testimony under Ron's name, leaving everything to Sharon. These apparent wills, life insurances, superannuation and attempts on 2 houses didn't all just happen by chance. Rather, they were by Sharon's design, a master manipulator. It was something police were cottoning on to as well as they began their analysis of the night Bruce died. They had questions of their own, many relating to the supposed accident scene. After their initial response, hearing the men's and Sharon's statements, and since receiving about a dozen phone calls casting doubt over the night, police pivoted and were no longer treating Bruce's death as suspicious. Diane McGinley is a forensic scientist and a senior sergeant in the Queensland Police Service, and was one of the officers assigned with examining the scene in the days and months that followed Bruce's death. Her job was made difficult by the fact the wood chipper had been hosed down by officers from the Queensland Fire and Emergency Service. This had been authorised by forensic officers on the night, who at the time thought they were dealing with an industrial accident. It was a move that would go on to impact the police investigation, but it didn't prevent Senior Sergeant McGinley from finding out the truth about what happened that night using photos taken of the original scene. After examining the photographs of bloodstain patterns found on the ground and wood chipper and connecting the DNA to Bruce, she concluded the following. First, Bruce's body was stationary for some time, bleeding on the ground about 2.5 metres behind the wood chipper. He was then moved from behind the machine to and across the feed tray, where his body was again stationary for a period of time and leaving further bloodstains. What that means is, police knew before Bruce ever went through the wood chipper, he'd been either severely injured or killed and was bleeding on the ground before his body was moved onto the machine and then put through it. The police now had concrete forensic evidence that this wasn't an accident, and they'd use it to try and drive a confession out of their top suspects. Next time on Killer Charm, suspicion around Sharon Graham continues to grow.
They're out drinking, celebrating, just all very, very odd behaviour for someone that has just lost, tragically, a man that you're in love with, or even a friend,
And the police drive up the pressure on their main suspects.
Everyone knows this. They're taught it from a young age to call 000. Why isn't it none of you called 000?
All people convicted of murder related to this case have lodged their intentions to appeal the outcomes. At the point of publishing this podcast, those appeals have not progressed further. That was episode 3 of Crime in Focus Killer Charm. If you want to hear more, remember you can search Crime in Focus Killer Charm wherever you get your podcasts to listen to all 6 episodes. That's it for this bonus ep of The Briefing. Chris Spiro and I will be back in your feed with your news headlines and a fresh deep dive tomorrow morning. I'm Tara Cassidy. See you next time.